Guess who's back, back again, again. Vincent's back, Kingpin's back. Tell your... But yes, guys, I'm sorry I'm late with this Hawkeye breakdown. I just, with the No Way Home, No Spoilers review, which you should check out, by the way, which I uploaded yesterday, and a couple of other things that came up. I couldn't put this video out, but I thought I still wanted to get my thoughts out on this episode for those who care about my thoughts. And yes, this episode was, yes, guess who's back? Kingpin's back. Thank you. And also, it was Yelena all along. Yes, so it is kind of a lot of what we thought, but nevertheless, it does feel good to kind of finally get to these points of confirmation with, especially Vincent's Kingpin making his very, very ominous, well, it was like a really blurry photo on that phone, which makes me think, does that mean we're going to actually see him in that next episode? And then with Yelena, well, yeah, it did kind of feel like they were framing Jack with the little kind of villainous silver streak in his fringe of his hair to be the villain, if you know what I mean. But then, yeah, it was kind of Yelena. But this episode, guys, I would love to know your thoughts about it down in the comments below. As always, do consider subscribing for more MCU content like this. Again, do check out my Spider-Man No Way Home No Spoilers review that I uploaded yesterday. I do mean that it is no spoilers. It just gives you vibes of the movie, what I came out of the movie feeling like. But let's start at the beginning of this episode, something I did like, even though there's a couple of things in this episode that make me kind of question the end of Black Widow, and we'll get to that when we get to that, and I'd love your input. It's Yelena on that Black Widow mission, and she goes to Anna to try and help her and somewhat liberate her like she's doing with all the other Black Widows from somewhat of a brainwashing situation. But it turns out that Anna wasn't even brainwashed, and she kind of likes what she's doing here and living here, and she's earning a lot of money through fulfilling, well, just what Black Widows do best, killing people for money. They get into a bit of discussion with how many other Black Widows have you helped, and she says many, but it's not exactly easy. It's hard work, hard finding them, hard watching them wake, but it's all worth it. Obviously, my favorite part about this, and this is something that I've been a big fan of in all of the MCU shows, no matter what you feel about WandaVision, whether you loved it or didn't really like how it kind of ended or whatever, right? Same with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's just when we get the kind of snap moments, some people find it too self-indulgent, but for me, I just like civilian perspectives, like in episode 1, where we saw the young Kate Bishop look at the invasion of New York, and here, it's obviously referring to when Yelena just disappears, but instead of just like a scene in between just saying 5 years later or something, as soon as she disappeared, she just came back. And that was from the perspective, I suppose, of what it would be like if you were snapped, you'd be gone, and then all of a sudden you would be back. And I thought that was a nice, pleasant surprise to play this scene. And as a result, she was wandering around, and the place looked completely different because Anna has since moved on with her life. She's adopted. She's, you know, there's quite a few changes. But the sad thing that came with this is Yelena's realization of, oh, I have to let Nat know that I'm okay. And I think we all know where that ended up. So then we get to pick up from the end of last episode where Kate returns home. We have, obviously, Yelena being concerned, and this just plays into more of what I've been saying. She comes across always as this really nice mother figure, really nice, endearing character to her daughter, like I guess any mother should be. But it gives you that sense of somewhat, oh, she's a nice lady, right? But again, I feel like Hawkeye, and predictability isn't a bad thing, by the way. It just means you might know where it's going. It's just, I feel like it's been very predictable this way, especially if you're kind of person who watches YouTube videos, makes them, maybe like I do. You have a little bit more of a locked eye on these things. Whereas maybe if I just was a complete casual watcher, I wouldn't have maybe sussed this. I don't know. It's interesting to think now. Do you have any friends and family who maybe wouldn't have seen this coming with Yelena? That would be interesting to know. But to me, it's always been obvious throughout the show. Again, the most obvious part is where on Eleanor's face when Kate revealed that I have to tell you something. Clint and I have been looking into Amon's murder, and we found out a lot of incriminating stuff about Jack and the Sloan Limited shell company and things like that. And her face, you know, just wasn't reactive. But to the audience, once again, this was just more food for thought. It wasn't really food for thought. It was just confirmation to me that she's like, if anything, oh shit, she's on to the fact that I have set Jack up and I have framed him, and it was me all along, and I need to kind of do something to throw my daughter off, and that is calling the police on Jack, as we see a little bit later on in the episode, even though obviously Kate does get that text message from Yelena. And once again, this episode, and what I really enjoyed about it, is setting up the next episode to be a really hopefully interesting one, with just everything that is somewhat coming together, and where just things might leave off for Kate Bishop and Clint Barton moving forward. Because we can't forget, this is episode 5, it's the penultimate episode, so the next episode is indeed the finale, so it really is all gonna be, I guess, pretty explosive next episode. In some in-between scenes, we have Echo and Kazi somewhat talk about, yeah, you kind of need to stop this, but Echo is somewhat relentless. I can completely understand her motivation. The next scenes I really enjoyed, with Kate returning to her burnt apartment, and Yelena's already there making macaroni. I really do like this character. She doesn't come across that kind of MCU role, or even the way she's written, where I was kind of keeping an eye out for this, like, is some of the humor a bit too on the nose or things like that? But no, like, the way Florence kind of just plays this role, she's just a really likable character. I feel like, and maybe this is just Haley Steinfeld, I feel like whoever she's in a scene with, when it comes to a big casted character like this, the chemistry always lights off, and between these two characters, if anything, I would like to see more of them together. And it was nice that she, jumping to it again, that she was looking out for her with the text message, I thought you deserved to know. There wasn't really any fake aspects to this conversation. It didn't really feel like a show of intimidation, albeit when she was walking away, she was like, don't get in my way again. Yelena just came across as, like, sincere. Here's, a bit of banter, but, like, here's what I think. You really don't know this guy. Obviously, when it comes to Yelena, she's got a bit of the wrong end of the stick when it comes to what happened between Clint and Natasha, and that's something I want to bring up with Val later with regards to the end of Black Widow and who hired Yelena in this episode. It is a bit like, it kind of works, but I don't know if it does properly. I want to get into that, so stay tuned for that. But regardless, I really enjoyed this scene, and I suppose it just kind of furthers along the story of Kate just learning a little bit more about the big scheme of things, how this is Natasha Romanoff's sister. I didn't expect that, as she said. It gives a bit more gravity to Clint's actions as Ronin. Again, with this as well, final word on it is I like Kate Bishop's unwavering faith in Hawkeye. You could say it's somewhat unfounded, to be fair, because as she says, she has only known him a week. But maybe at the same time, you can read a person in some other way. And as she said, well, regardless of that, I know he's a good man, and he would not let that happen in regards to Natasha. I do believe that she does read Clint right. And as we know with what happened between Clint and Natasha in those final moments, he didn't want that to happen, and he would have happily have sacrificed himself. And I can't wait for that revelation to come out in the next episode, probably, to Yelena. I've got a feeling it could be predictable. I'll hold my hands up if I'm wrong, that Yelena will get to a point of actually executing Clint, whether it's through handgun or sword or whatever, I don't know, right? And I think Clint would just take off the mask and just be like this, like, just kill me. Because I think he will want to be, even though he's got a family and stuff. That would be something to think about if they do play it this way. I think through his absolute despair and openness for Yelena to somewhat punish him, because Clint probably feels such guilt for, what he says in this episode with how he's relived that moment every day 1,000 times or whatever, with how it could have gone differently. I think that somewhat utter vulnerability in front of Yelena will make her cock her head a bit and just be like, even though he didn't actually cause Natasha'S death. I would love to know your theories as to how you think Yelena's mind will be a little bit swayed. Do you think it's going to be through Clint doing a moment like that where he's like, going in, if you want to kill me, I feel like being dead? Do you feel that that would be a bit silly considering he has a family? Or do you think it does balance out with the fact that he does feel such guilt for Natasha? And then we had Clint head up to Grill's apartment. I can't really remember why he was doing that. I feel like because he said he had a hotel, maybe he was just going up there to just make sure he looked after the dog for a couple more days, as he said. Maybe he just wanted some company, I suppose. But, I do find it a little bit of a stretch that he has only known these people from LARPing. They're putting a lot of emphasis on this LARPing stuff. And obviously, with the other thing that came out of this scene, we had Grills say that Missy dropped off the new outfits for Clint and Kate, but he doesn't want to see them right now. And this is going to lead into The LARPers giving him, I guess, the more comic accurate Hawkeye suit. I still don't know how I feel about that. Obviously, they've weaved it in a way that somewhat fits in the show. But I've had some issues with the LARPing throughout, just the way that it has fit, the way, you know, I've mentioned in previous videos. And you just know they're going to engage in the LARPing, like actual live-action roleplay, probably by the end scene of, well, not the end scene of the next episode, the finale. But yeah, I would love to know your thoughts on just the whole way the LARPing was introduced in Hawkeye. Then we get that scene where Jack's being arrested because the cops were called by Yelena. Poor guy, like he is like the most, I feel like, neutral character in all of this, where he's like done nothing wrong. He says it's all a misunderstanding because he hasn't worked a day in his life. You know, I would have done the same thing, Yelena. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll get this all sorted out because I've obviously been framed. Again, if you have absolutely no clue of this, you probably take that line as, like, I've obviously been framed as him lying. But no, this guy is innocent. And I'll clip myself if I'm wrong about this at my own expense. But yeah, it's just like, I feel sorry for this guy. He's in bed with a woman who is really just using him probably as a front. Like, does Yelena actually like him if she's willing to make him the fall guy for the Sloan Limited Shell Company on behalf of Kingpin? Because you have to think, like, she can't care too much if she was willing to let him go down for it because she signed up for that company with Jack's name. I reiterate this probably every episode because when I see a sad Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye, I get very sad myself. I'm a sucker for emotional moments, even if, let's just say, in a show or a movie where the writing or something is bothering me a bit or whatever, if there's like a moment with a character I still really care about, it crushes me in a slight way. So when he's at that memorial listing the Avengers and talking to Natasha, calls her stubborn, she always had to win, you know, for a stupid orange rock, he's replayed that moment in his head a million times, hoping for a different outcome, and how he misses her. It's just that, I can always get, it's just picturing it in my head when he said he missed her. It's just, I love it. I love it, but it's sad at the same time, obviously. And he says that he does his best every day to earn what she gave him. And that is obviously not to delve back down into the Ronin roots and to really, because I guess, you know, that is true. Like, Clint could go down a much darker mind state and path like he was, but because of what Natasha did, he would never ever let himself go to that severity again. So he does his best every day to earn what she gave him, like, thus always leading a good life. Eventually, we saw Kate ringing Clint. This was a funny scene. Not really too much to say about it, other than, like, this was the moment she realized she just couldn't leave him alone. And she went after him to appear a little bit later. But all those voicemails were starting off, you know, just somewhat calm, and then a bit passive-aggressive. And then it's just like, no, this is your fault, Clint. Then we had the Tracksuit guys. It's just like the Trust Me Bro moving company. I did think, really? I don't know. I know they are somewhat accurate to the comics in terms of like the tracksuits, and they do say bro a lot in the comics, but I don't know. I do feel like they don't really feel like real characters to me at the same time. But this is where things get super interesting, and I didn't know, with regards to what we spoke about with that flashback of her father's death in the source material being caused by Kingpin, I thought, okay, maybe they're doing it in a different way where Ronin just killed them anyway, right? But then we learn, and I was looking into this with how we learned through what Clint was speaking to Kate about a couple of episodes back, with regards to him being used by a weapon utilized by the right people, that maybe Val sent him there. In terms of how, if you think about it, Val could have utilized him in a prototype Thunderbolt way as Ronin, and he was more than happy to do that and let out his rage to fulfill the missions that she set him on. And that's why at the end of Black Widow, she sent Yelena after him, in a sense of just clearing up some loose ends, because he decided to toss away the Ronin mantle, and that may be problematic for her. But it doesn't turn out to be that, because obviously, as we learn in the next moments after the conversation between Clint and Laura, where she really endorses what he's about to do, she trusts his judgment, all good stuff there. Especially, like, again, the hyping up of the Kingpin, because he even says, if I don't end this tonight, it's just a matter of time before the big guy gets involved. And what I love so much about this, regardless of how I judge how they handle Kingpin in the MCU compared to the Marvel Netflix shows, I like how much grand, like, from the shadows this guy is being built up as. Because Kingpin is Kingpin at the end of the day. And they need to be careful when they handle him. And at least at the very, very basic premise of how they're delivering him right now, it is grand. But to get back to what I was saying, this is when Ronin arrives, or should I say Echo is at the location, not alone. She brings some tracksuit members with her, but they get easily taken out by Ronin. This is where a bit of a fight unfolded, and I feel like even with a few episodes back, when we had the Echo versus Hawkeye and now Echo versus Ronin combat, the choreography out of all the choreography here, I'm pretty sure is the best that the show's done between these two characters. It's just really slick, really fast. I don't see any moments too much where there's like a hand, you know, let's just say said character gets him by the throat, and it's just like, why aren't you doing anything with this hand? Normally in MCU choreography, there's quite a bit of that, which can be handled a little bit better, but with these two, it's like, it's pretty like zoom, zoom, dum, 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 and it's good. It's good. I just want to say I'm really entertained by that. But this is where it finally gets revealed that Hawkeye basically threatens her, saying, or should I say, Ronin, I wanted you to see my face. This is who I am. If you threaten my family, I will basically kill you. I give you my word on that. But I do think, and I know this had to be a means to the end of the story, and Clint said he had to end it. One thing I'm only iffy on, off the top of my head here, I know it can be seen a bit silly as to how he could have said this message. Could have done this. With Masque on, I beat you, I will kill you, I give you my word on that, but I'm going to give you this information with how Kingpin basically set your father up to be dead, and that will send her off on a new mission. He could have still maintained his anonymity and still told her that message, because at the end of the day, even with his mask off, she disarmed him and then was about to kill him anyway if it wasn't for Kate's arrow. So I do still argue, unless I'm missing something here from my just top of my head thoughts, I do think that the same outcome could have been achieved, and her mission priority of avenging her father would have still flipped over to the investigation on, did Kingpin, did Uncle do this? Even if he kept his mask down. By the way, not to sound dense, the only reason I'm saying this as well is before anyone says, oh, but obviously, you know, she can't hear him. I'm saying this because he clearly seems to know sign language, so he could have got it across with the mask on, because you see these repeated hand movements from Clint that maybe he would have been able to get that point across without exposing his identity and thus the members of his family. And then he emphasizes, your boss wanted your father dead, and now he's using you, and then she still reacts and is just about to kill him. So I just still argue, if Ronin delivered that with mask down, same outcome would have been achieved. He would have let her go still, mask down, and that same talk with Kazi and Echo would have still happened, where she's asking questions, he's kind of cacking himself about it, he clearly looks nervous. She probably wants to kill him there and then, knowing in her gut that he was involved, but she needs to get that extra confirmation, I think, through riding off on the motorcycle, probably going to Uncle and stuff. You get where I'm going with this. I just feel like now it comes across like Clint just revealed his identity, even though she was somewhat more on the ball, because she was gathering information on Clint's family. It still wasn't confirmed to her, because when he took the mask off, she was still a bit like, oh, it is you, kind of thing. So I would love to know your thoughts there. If you really try and look at it objectively without bias, like, trust me, I love this show, but if I try and apply a bit of non-bias to this objective look at that situation, that's somewhat what I see. But obviously, the best thing about this is that it is true to the comics with how Kingpin still was responsible for wanting Echo's father killed, and it was just delivered through the means of the Ronin. And it's fair enough that Kate arrived on the scene, because she's literally got access to the Bishop security tech, which can track Clint's phone. The only weakness I feel like I add here is that if Clint's phone is so easily tracked, even if it is like a tech app from the Bishop security company, you would have thought criminals would have some kind of access to some kind of tracking thing, where I just argue and put it on the table that surely, like, if his phone's so easily trackable, it could be done that way for the other side of the team. Meanwhile, in between scenes where we have Clint and Kate back at Grill's apartment, we have Yelena following who hired her, and it basically goes back to Elena walking in this location in where the Kingpin is just chilling out. Wilson Fisk is just having lunch somewhere, or wherever he is in his own establishment, and she sends that message saying, I found out who hired me, Elena Bishop. Thought you deserved to know. And the only thing, as I mentioned earlier, what I found a bit like strange about this is just that if you technically think about it, Val, she didn't really hire Yelena, if you think about it this way. She just said, I thought, in Black Widow, at that end credit scene, I thought you'd like a look at the man responsible for his death. So yes, I guess Elena kind of hired her, or like, and it's a bit ambiguous, maybe I'm being stupid, but like, in the photo, obviously Elena is there, and Kingpin is there. So maybe on the phone last episode when I thought maybe she was ringing Val, taking into account the end of Black Widow's scene, maybe she was telling Val to tell Yelena, who had already set her up to go after Ronin, Clint Barton, that, hey, he's in New York around this area, like, can you go get him? But the way this show is now making it look that, no, it was Kate's mother, Elena, and Kingpin together who hired Yelena to kill Clint Barton, but I feel like they're completely missing out the Val catalyst of this whole situation. Val was still the one responsible. It's like, hey, look, Ronin, unmasked, Clint Barton, I thought you'd like a look at the man responsible for Natasha'S death. And then it's like, Hawkeye show, no, Kingpin and Elena'S Bishop sent... It was really Kingpin, but I think Elena helped facilitate it, like last episode when she was calling after Clint left on the elevator, hey, by the way, you might want to get your Black Widow assassin Yelena he's right around here. So, yeah, did anyone feel a bit like, also they're forgetting that, like, Yelena was sent kind of by Val? Val wouldn't have done that if she didn't want Clint dead. Like, she was more than happy to get Yelena, say, like, hey, look at this. I'm strongly hinting you go after this man, and I'm twisting the story. Do you see what I mean? Like, he didn't really kill her, but he's the man responsible, so you see where I'm going with there. Not a massive issue, it's just like, I don't know why they're not implementing Val more than what I thought they would, considering she arrived in the MCU show, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I thought maybe she would have some influence in this show, but she actually doesn't. But I'm also glad that it is Kingpin, don't get me wrong. And also, with that revelation, with Kate's like, and then at the end credit title, I don't know if, I think a lot of you have noticed this by now, because this is a late video, we have the Kingpin silhouette over the end title Hawkeye credit thing, which was a nice, awesome, big nod. Again, my favorite thing about that is that he's being set up to be truly the Kingpin. Anyway, though, everyone, those are my thoughts on episode 5, the penultimate episode of Hawkeye. Let me know what you thought of my thoughts. Do you have any theories for how things are going to go down next episode? Because I don't feel like the last episode is too predictable, because up until this point it was. But it's like, okay, now that we know it's Elena, which a lot of us have known, Jack is just a fool guy, Kingpin is involved, how are the dominoes going to fall? Like, truly. Where are things going to be left off? Where are we going to see these characters again in the future? Like Kate. Is Clint just going to go home for Christmas? Fair enough. But, like, what happens with the status quo of Kate and Clint now? Is she still his partner? But partner in what if he's just a family man now? Do you see what I mean? Like, I want to know those answers. Very intrigued. Like this video if you got this far. Do consider subscribing if you got this far as well. Links, as always, are in the top pinned comment in the comment section. Not in the description, but in the top pinned comment. But, everybody, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll see you, fellow people of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in the next video. Goodbye.